Hey, welcome to tonight's installment of Shop Night Live. We are here in my shop in Canterbury, New Hampshire, and I know some of you have been here, but a lot of people haven't, and you're at a distance, and I realized I've never really shown you around and let you see the way the shop is set up, maybe some things to think about yourself if you're setting up your own shop or are dreaming of having a shop someday. Just to begin with, this shop, I'm just so grateful to have it. It's the best shop I've ever been in. It's been here, I've been working out of it since 2002, 2003. So, what is that? 16 years, 17 years? So, it's been a real blessing. It's been an amazing space, but I built this shop with the specific idea that I was going to host classes in here. So the way it's designed and built was with that in mind. So every shop is personal. I mean, you may want to be a wood turner, and basically all you need is a bandsaw and a lathe. So you don't need a lot of space. But everybody's got to figure out, what do you want to make? If you're making kitchen cabinets, you need a lot of space, and you need a whole different kind of set of tools. But I've always been making custom furniture, so it's a lot like the shop you might set up for yourself. If you just wanted to make a lot of different things, my professional shop actually doesn't look that different. When we were thinking of building it, we thought we needed enough space to have students come in, and I didn't want to have large groups. I thought a max of about 8 students was about as many as I could give a quality experience, and have some more personal time with. So we have benches that are a little over 4 feet long, and everybody gets to have a spot. My shop has to be a little flexible. Sometimes I'm putting tools in this area. Sometimes I'm clearing it for classes. So when I was building the shop, I remember I was apprenticing in North Carolina with Pug Moore. I posted a picture of him and me back in those days on Instagram this morning, and he was such a great guy. He was a master craftsman who worked in 18th century furniture. So I had 3 years in his shop when he was in his 70s. So we made all kinds of 18th century furniture together. But I remember one time sitting there, and I was dreaming of a shop someday, because I had a small garage, 20 by 20 shop at my house at that time. And he said, I said, how would you do it differently? If you had a chance to build your shop again, what would you do differently? And he had a cinder block shop that his father had built fairly inexpensively, but it was nice. It was cozy, and it had posts, like a center post and a concrete floor, and the ceilings weren't super high. So the things he noted were all things that he'd like to change about his shop, of course, and he said, Tom, if I could build it again, first I'd build it twice as big as I thought I needed. I'd build it so I could work on wooden floors, not poured concrete, because it was hard on his knees over the years, and he was definitely feeling it in his legs. And he said he would build it at all possible without any posts in the room and higher ceilings. So when I set to building this shop, I had his advice in my mind the whole time. So here we are. I mean, these ceilings are 10 feet high in this room, and it's much bigger than I thought I would have. It ended up being twice as big because we set it back into a hill, and we got a whole nother floor downstairs. So that happened almost by accident. I'm not so sure about that advice, though, make it twice as big as you need, because if you're not planning on expanding and having a larger business with a lot of people, if you're like me, you will just fill up that space with things, and maybe you don't need it if you're not an organizer and someone who throws things out and passes them on easily. So I don't speak to you as someone who is a really great organizer. I organize, it's a struggle for me to get things settled, but I'm pretty well set up in here now. It's only taken me almost 30 years. But no, this shop, no, it's only about 16. So, but anyway, I've got the wooden floor, the high ceilings, and no posts. One of the nice things about posts, though, I can say is, you can, if it's in the middle of the room, you'll just position one of your stationary tools near it. It just makes it awkward, though, to sweep around sometimes and you're hitting posts. So we put these long trusses across the 30-foot span that were 16 inches high and able to carry the weight upstairs. So it ended up being more than enough room. And then the way the shop is positioned is important, too, because one of the main factors you have to think about is lighting. Ideally, the lighting in your shop will be so diffuse or diverse that it won't cast many shadows. So that's kind of tricky to do because almost everywhere, like at nighttime, if I have my bench back here, the lighting from the fluorescence is a little in front of me and I get a shadow back here. So I'll just push my bench out so I can see better from the back, or I have to get a light. Now, I also built it so that the shop would be passive solar in some sense. We have radiant heat in the flooring, but these big windows are all south-facing. So in the winter, it's a wonderful way to get some passive, like solar and the radiant heat coming in the windows. And it just casts sunlight right across the whole room. And you can almost feel it warm up right to 60, mid-60s, even on a cold winter day, because it's well insulated and we've got that south-facing wall. So that's one of the main considerations is lighting. Now, I've read, and I think it's good advice, that it's actually better if you can be on the north side of your shop. I really like the light. I like the strength of the sunlight, so I like being in it. But if you want that really pure, soft light, and you have the access to a lot of north-facing windows, it's almost like an artist studio. So you'll get that, just that ambient kind of light coming in the windows, and it puts a soft, like even lighting on your work. So it also makes for a great space to take photographs of your work instead of the hard shadows, which seems to be a big thing these days. But this is my bench space. So I do most of my work here, and I set my bench here, which has, I'm not going to go a lot into the bench, but there is so much you could talk about with a bench and customizing it really for the kind of work you're going to do. This is pretty ideal for me because I like to have a vise right here. Of course, I have other vices I would like to improve on and put in here, but this is what we always had at Pugs. He had these quick action vices. They have like a little cam that kicks in when you turn the handle, and so you can open and close it without having to wind it the whole way. And once you start turning it, it engages this little loose cam on the bottom. And so once it's under pressure, it locks against the piece. So I really like that. I can operate it very quickly and make it work for me. Now there's a lot of better and different types of side vices like this, but that's pretty effective for most of what I'm doing. And if I want to put something in there on edge and it's long, I'll often just slip the bench under. A stool underneath to catch the edge if it's wide enough, if I have to plane the edge, or I don't have a fancy holder or anything for the edge, because I don't do that much on the wide edges of stock that I can't do with the stool. But then you'll also need some type of tail vise and some kind of dogs to be able to hold work flat. So you've got to have some way to hold a board flat so that you can work on the wider flat surface. So I'm always down here using this end of the vise, this end of the bench for hand planing. I would just get a panel in here, and this is super nice material. This also has the quick action, but it's being a little stubborn at the moment. And this is a long tail vise here. So then with this, you can drop the dogs low enough so you're not going to hit them, and then I just clean up a surface like this. I was saying last night how much fun that is when you have the plane tuned well and you're getting these nice wide, just wispy shavings that are leaving this polished surface. When I build the bottom of this blanket chest, it goes right off of the tool. There's no sanding. I'll just glue it up, and in that case it's actually shiny. But that's what you can do when you have some type of means of capturing the wood on the end with the holding, like bench dogs are the most common method. You can pop them down low enough to do that work. And this is a shaker reproduction bench. And I occasionally use this for hand planing on flat surfaces too, because it's got the bench dog here, and you can put the dog holes here. And this is a nice tail vise. It's a different type. It's pretty sweet. It's got it's engaged and on a groove, so it stays nice and aligned. If you're going to build a bench and you want to dive deep into the type of options and things you might want to consider, Chris Schwartz, I can't remember, if you just look him up, it's the most recent book on benches. But then right behind the bench, I've got my hand tools. It's something about having your tools on the wall. I think aesthetically, it's just warm, and it just makes your space. It defines it, and it also gives you a nice place to put all your best tools, the ones you use most frequently. So, and then when you're done, I rarely do close this, but it's pretty cool to be able to close it up and see it so much neater like that. Behind your bench also, other than this kind of starting lineup of tools, hand tools that I have in the cabinets, I have other smaller tools and needs in here where I have drill bits and fittings for screw guns and whatever. And then in here I have all these router bits and a bunch of wrenches and various things I need for the tools. And then I keep the power hand tools low right here next to my back storage cabinet. And I have a multi-outlet plug on the end here. So I'll just plug them in, and I'm usually dealing with these right here on this end of the bench. So it works out pretty well. And then you notice I got a little sharpening station right on top. So it's a nice solid little space. And I've got my water stones, which I use. These are some beautiful stones that I got from Lee Nielsen. And I've been showing these to various classes that have come through so you can test different qualities. You really do get what you pay for in water stones as well. So then, of course, over here I've got all these clamps. They're really convenient to the bench. Some that I use the most frequently are these on the side, like these short ones. You're just using them quickly for things right by the vise. So then over here, I've got my setup table, which is nice to have. You got to have somewhere to assemble things that's a little larger surface. And I just have this basically is made up of two of the student benches. I put them together and put a piece of MDF on top. But you could build your own space, which had drawers or space under, and I've seen people actually make more stationary with outlets attached. So you can do some of your hand tool machining. You could have all those right in around your setup bench as well. So over here on this bench, I keep, projects I'm working on. I've got a number of things. We've got the tilt-top table going, and I'm finishing off some Adirondacks from a previous class. So that's a nice big space for that. Up on the wall, this is just a small sampling of some of the patterns, the furniture patterns. And this was I got from being in Pug's space. Like, most of those are my patterns, but some of them are old from his shop, like these. I think pretty much all of those are from his shop, and I can see his writing on some of them still. And it's this old type of plywood that you would buy down in North Carolina. And so it has a different density, and it's the full 1/4 inch. But those clusters of patterns, like quite a number of those are just everything you need to know to build a chair, like any of these. And then, of course, you have some solid leg patterns that can be made from these flat, two-dimensional patterns. One thing to think about when you're building your shop is the layout for convenience. Okay, so it's sort of like in a kitchen. If you're building a kitchen, one of the things they talk about is the work triangle. So you have to think about the distance between your stove, your refrigerator, and your sink. And that should be as small as you can make it to be efficient and make a nice workspace. Well, in a shop, you're thinking of flow as well, but of course it's very different. So when I come in the back door, I'll often lay the rough lumber that I may have just bought on that bench and mark it out, or I'll stand it up right here, like these boards are here. I got a couple cherry boards here, and I can mark it with chalk. Sometimes I've already marked it out with chalk at the lumber yard, and it's still rough. So in order to prepare it for use, I've got to flatten it and get it ready. But to do that, I first just chunk it up. I cut it in rough lengths. And so conveniently, you come right over. You should have an area like, I like having a chop saw. Used to always be radial arm saws were in the shop, right here by the door, so I can slide it right in and just cut it to width. So then I've got it all set up. So you're coming in, you've got a flow where you come in the door, you're coming close by, you're getting it chopped to length, and then you want to take it to get it flattened. Now, this is where my shop right now needs some redesign, and that's what I'm in the middle of doing. So it's a good example of how not to have it at the moment. But when I brought in this joiner, planer over here, where I really want it, I want to have the joiner a little closer to the radial arm saw, because that's where you go to next from there. Usually you're flattening it one side, and then you're thickness planing here. So I had it tucked in this area, but I had to move the lathe in. So it's kind of in an odd spot right now. But I'm going to move this joiner over on this side of this large table saw, and this table saw is going to go that way a little bit. So the joiner will be right here. So I'll run things through the joiner planer, and then I go right, usually to a table saw, one of this table saw or that table saw. So you can see how I'll have a very nice, tight workflow. So this was my old standby. This is what you classically find in an American wood shop, is the American cabinet saw. This is an old Powermatic 66, but a great saw. I've got it up a little higher because I like it higher. But so it's about 4 inches higher than normal. And it is on the wheels, so I can wheel it out of here because it's not, this is where I have classes too. And I had to make it more mobile from the show as well. So then back in here, I've got a drill press. And that's something you can have over on a wall space. It's not something you go to very frequently. So you can find a good little wall space where it's not strategically taking up a prime location. So here's nice. It's right behind the door, pretty much, and I can have it right in here. Now you want to have your tooling. Usually you try to get all your tooling, your bits and things as close by. And I just recently put this cabinet up here for this, so I don't have the tools in here yet, but I've got a drawer full of router bits, so I'm just going to, drill bits. Different types of Forstner and bits will be in here, and it will make it nice and convenient to work with that. I may even put some router bits in here because right now I'm keeping this router table here. This is a sweet, nice solid router table. Never had one this nice. But it's on wheels, and quite often I'll wheel it out over near where I'll be working it so I can create a tight work triangle if I'm doing multiple processes. You know, I'll bring it over nearer the joiner or over by the bandsaw or whatever. So it's pretty sweet, and I've got accessories here. This is another sharpening station, but I've used this a lot for classes. So we've got all these different guides for sharpening. And this is a different type of stone. And then the grinder setup. And then we've got the hollow chisel mortiser right here. You've seen this used a lot. And this, again, doesn't need a prime location. So here it is. It's behind the door. So I can put longer stock here, but it doesn't take up much room. And then I keep a stool right by it because you're sitting down most times when you're working with that. But this is a European saw. And this is made more for, it really shines on cutting panels. It's really unbelievable with this slider. But I know it's literally foreign to a lot of American shops, but they're becoming a lot more popular in a lot of the American saw companies are now offering the accessory to put a slider on there. The genius of them is that they're super safe, and they're safe because when you cut, you're standing to the side of the blade, and the workpiece is always falling free off in this empty space. When you want to rip, they can rip, but they're not. They're really meant to do most everything off of the slider. I've used it to rip, but sometimes I'll just use my other table saw to rip, and this will be set up for cross-cutting. But they're also really great at cutting a lot of panels. So if you intend to make a lot of paneled things like shaker blanket chests like this, then or you're going to make a lot of kitchen cabinets, I would seriously consider a sliding table saw. And then this really nice bandsaw over here, which I love because it's beefy, and I've never had a saw that was this strong that could resaw. So the throat capacity on this is like 19 inches, and it can resaw way up. I mean, I could get like 15 to 16 inches high there with the resaw. It's crazy. But you'd have to really have that dialed in, and probably with an accessory fence getting you a little more vertical. But I also have my little old faithful Inca bandsaw. This one, these were great saws. This was one of the first tools I invested in when I was starting out. And it was expensive at the time. These were like $700, like 30 years ago. But it's been a wonderful saw, and I usually keep just a 1/4 inch or a 3/8 inch blade on it. It does more of the finer work. It's just a little 10-inch bandsaw. So it's nice to have one of each. I mean, but I got by with that for a long time. But to resaw and do larger work, so solid, so nice to have a larger, heavier one like that. This is my temporary setup for the lathe for some videos we've been doing recently. But I really like it. I like being away from the wall in the light. I turned a lot with a lathe facing the wall. But, you know, it's nice to be near a window and to have something about looking out into the open space that I prefer. And I'm actually going to move this saw out. This was my old classic bandsaw. It's nice to have an old piece of machinery in your shop, just as a throwback. But I actually use this saw. I bought it off a good friend of mine who lives nearby who collects this brand. But it's not, I have done some resawing on it, but it's not really as sturdy and accurate as that other saw is set up for resawing. So it's been a good saw, but right now it's not even connected because it used to sit where that felder does, and I slid it down here. So I'll be moving it out, and I'm going to swing my lathe over this way. So I'll be able to work facing this way, and then we'll have this bench space will be open, and the lathe will just be right out in this space. And then we'll still have this corner for another bench. It's got a nice bench space here and a cabinet. So I have had apprentices work with me, and each time I've had one. Dave was with me for 4 years initially, and then Levi spent 6 years with me, but we didn't have him set up in this corner. They were more over in this area. And this is great to have, a thickness sander after you thickness plane things. This is a 16-inch wide thickness planer, drum sander that will thickness things, but this is really sturdy. I used to have one that this company bought out. Performax used to make them, and this Supermax bought them out, and then they got bought out by Laguna. But this Supermax it's like they fixed all the little quirks that, you know, from using a tool you realize weren't quite right with the Performax. I mean, this is direct drive. It's really smooth. There's no belter. And 16s are good. They do make a 19, which is nice, but this has been a sweet little sander, so I've enjoyed that. And so I keep that back here. I don't use that as much. And this is my vacuum press table, which has moved around, but this is where I made that laminated curved form and the base for the Lombardi trophy. And, you know, it just goes right in here, slides right in, suctions down, and that'll be part of some of the projects that we'll get into. And there's a bunch of hand tools, Festool sustainers, all kinds of sweet gadgets and tools in there. And then more patterns. So quite a few of these posts were in Pugmore's shop, especially the ones with the faded masking tape on them. He would actually put masking tape on, and some of them say, you know, it'll say Mrs. So-and-so, because it was usually women would come in and say, Pug, I like this bed, and then he'd write a note on the tape, like, could I have it in walnut, in a queen, a little bit taller, or a little heavier? You know, it was just, all the information would go on the post, and then he'd make them up the bed. But I turned a fair number of those posts as well, but a lot of them were from his style. So it's just sweet to have things laid out like that are memories and also references for people to see if you were making a lot of those. The last thing I'll show you is this massive shaper. This is just a crazy good shaper, but it's got a sliding table just as nice as the slider on the table saw. And these things are unbelievable how beautifully built they are. I can't explain it. But it's just a really beautiful shaper. So it's nice to have a solid shaper, but if you're in a small shop, I mean, you don't need to have a shaper unless you're going to be doing a lot of like millwork type things. You can do quite well and get by with a solid router table like I showed you earlier. That's how I got by for a long time. You know, it all depends. It gets back to what do you want to do in your shop, and is it worth investing in that higher grade of tooling to do it? My shop is a hybrid shop of machinery and some technology, you know, like the vacuum press, but old world methods as well, all centered around the bench space. But one more thing I do want to throw in is just a little organization of what do you do when you're working and you have cutoffs. One of the hardest things I've had to figure out is what to do with, you know, those little short pieces next to the chop saw. Like, what do you do with them? I save like the shorter pieces that are nice in a little bin right here. And then the larger pieces get stacked, but I try to keep this trimmed down. And I've had a lot of wood in here at different times. Downstairs, I've got a much larger storage for wood like this. I like to store it on end like this because you can see it so easily and move it around. When you put it up on racks, you're burying everything but the top layer, and you're only seeing the end or the edge grain. So if you can stand it up, that's the luxury of high ceilings. It's pretty sweet. But anyway, the last thing is these bags are trash compactor bags. I buy them in bulk, like online. So if you want to get rid of your short pieces, this is like it's a 2.5 mil bag. I got 40 bags here. I think I just searched on Amazon, and this has been one of the best discoveries I've ever made because I can fill it up, and then they're strong enough not to tear. And when I get a bag about that much, I just tie it off and I keep them cut up, and this becomes my kindling at the house. So we just take bags like this to the house. All right, thank you all so much for being a part of it. We'll be back. We'll keep you noted of the next time we'll be doing it. It's 2 weeks from now. And I'll look forward to seeing you then. Have a good night.